So you got this really long thing about me in front of you, but I also like to know who I'm speaking with. So do I have any comrades with me tonight? Do I have any military veterans with me tonight? Sir, what branch?
Marine Corps.
Oh, Semper Fi. Thank you for your service. My son is a devil dog. I might slip that out a little bit later. Any more veterans with me?
They turned me down.
They turned you down? Okay, okay. I'm sure there was some reason and some cause for that.
Typhoid.
Yeah, well, there's probably your reasons, sir. That's okay. I think he had your back, right?
And my son, 24 years, my dad, World War
Oh, nice. Well, thank you. You did serve. You served through your family. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think, you know, I've been in the military for a little bit, but I think the hardest part of the military was on the families, which I'm sure I'll interject that a little bit here in my story just the same. If I get out of line, you need to let me know, devil dog, okay? And keep me in check.
You're not out of line.
Not,
Say whatever you want to say around here.
all right, I love it. Well, let's take off the hat and do this then. So as you see by my bio, I only got a little thing. I'm going to talk about just what's highlighted. So we're going to make this short and sweet. I am a girl, so I did bring some clothes with me today because women do travel with heavy luggage, right? Isn't that the way women travel? But there's a reason that I brought those with me. And as you heard, I've served in 2 different bridges. So I'm going to just start from the beginning. I thought I had 20 minutes. They told me I had an hour, so I think I can fill it. I'm not sure, but we'll see what we do. So I'm born and raised in Stark County. I am a Tiger. How many of you guys know about Massillon Tigers? Yes, love our football, right? So as I was a senior in high school, I was a little wayward. I came from a divorced home. I lived with my father, who did an amazing job raising a rebellious teenager like me. And it got to my high school year, and he's kind of like, what are you going to do with your life? And I'm like, I don't know. I knew he couldn't send me to college. There was no way. He was a factory worker. He could not do that. So I had a friend that said, why don't we go in the Army? And I'm like, all right, we'll go in the Army. I didn't know what I was getting into. I just graduated high school. I was 17 years old. We went into this thing called the buddy program, where you could go in with your buddy into the military. So we went and took all of our tests, and we got all that squared away, and it got time to sign the original contract. My girlfriend, Jane, I used to call her Bingo, well, she bingoed on me, and she was gone. So here I am, I'm steadfast. I have to leave Massillon. I need to get out of Stark County. I need to get out of Ohio. There really was no purpose for me there. I couldn't go to college. I didn't have a job, didn't know what I was going to do. So I thought I was lost and I was wayward. So I joined the United States Army. I remember the day the recruiter came and he knocked on my door, and my dad I thought he was sleeping on the couch, but he wasn't. I think he was holding back the tears as he laid there. And I'm like, Dad, the recruiter's here. And he's like, all right. And off I went into the unknown. So I got down to Fort McClellan, Alabama, which is where I did my boot camp. Now, the funny thing about it is I wasn't supposed to go to the MPs to do my boot camp, but because they messed up our dates, I got stuck with the MPs, which are military police. So here I am doing my boot camp with the military police. They have 2 phases to their training, one phase being boot camp, the second phase being their AIT, which is their advanced individualized training. So I'm there to do my boot camp. Now, not only am I there to do my boot camp, but there are other people there with me. There's this little girl about this big. She was there to do she was working on missiles. There were nurses there. So it was a bunch of us that missed our actual class for our boot camp. So we got to Fort McClellan. I don't know if anybody ever been to Alabama. Did you ever see those cockroaches that fly? So there was a guy in my class, and I'll never forget this. So we had 1 platoon of females, because back then you didn't integrate. So we had 1 platoon of females, and then platoons 2, 3, and 4 were males. One of the guys that was there, his father was actually in Special Forces. And so we're standing in the chow hall, and he slaps one and eats it. And I'm like, that didn't look like it had a lot of nutrient to it, but he said it's a lot of good protein, so we left it at that. But yeah, it was really, really hot. I was down there in November, long ruck marches down there. Fast forward to today, last Tuesday. My stepdaughter left for the United States Air Force. But before that, we were preparing on boot camp stuff. And I told her, I said, I remember contraband. You can't have contraband. I said, don't let anybody send you anything that's contraband. We had a girl, and I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I am. We had a young lady who got caught with some M&Ms. Sounds silly, doesn't it? Well, I remember we had open bay barracks. There's probably 100 females. There's wall lockers, bunks, wall lockers, bunks, wall lockers. It's just all the way in this open bay. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and over the intercom we hear for her to get down to the drill sergeant ASAP. Really loud. She goes down there. From what we heard thereafter, there was a pitcher, there was some water, there was a ruler, there was a spoon, and there was little popsicle sticks. We had this walkway underneath the barracks on top where we would form, and she had to literally plant an M&M every 6 inches and put a little stick. And throughout the rest of our basic training, she had to go down in the middle of the night and water her M&M trees. So she was making M&M trees. So boot camp was kind of fun, but I will tell you, M&M trees don't grow. When we graduated, the drill sergeant said, hey, can you go ahead and let them know, or show your parents your M&M trees? Well, they didn't really grow. Boot camp to me was really interesting. I actually liked it. I thought it was fun. I was really into it physically. I was really small, but I could run, and I was really good at it. I was really like first time go on all of my evolutions, which is really amazing because I've never handled a weapon before. I'm expert shot on my M16. I'm just doing really, really good. I got caught talking one time. We were cleaning down I had a detail clean down the stairwell, and the guy that was above me was cleaning the top stairwell. I pick it up and go down, and the drill sergeant Talavera, a little small guy, he caught me talking one day, and he's like, you want to talk, Private Covey? Let's talk. So he had me in the front line rest position with this other guy, and we are face to face in the front line rest position. And he was like, so what's your name? I'm like, Private Covey, Drill Sergeant. Did you hear that? That's Private Covey. What's your name? And we're having this conversation until this guy's arm starts shaking and he falls. And the drill sergeant thought that was really amazing that I outdid this male. So every time the drill sergeant saw me for the whole rest of my 8 weeks, well, it was probably 6 weeks left, every time he saw me, Private Covey, come here, so-and-so wants to have a conversation with you. So every time I saw this drill sergeant, I would try to run from him because but what he didn't realize is he was helping me because I was now maxing out my push-ups because I'm doing really, really well. We got out for our bivouac, which is a 2-week evolution at the very end of the boot camp that you must pass. If not, they send you back home. And drill sergeant got me. He said, go get your battle buddy. So my battle buddy was Private Brown, Sweet Ginger Brown, I used to call her. And I was like, come on, we got to go do something. So he had us do this recon where we went over to where this other platoon, or other company was at doing their bivouac, and we stole all the water from their water buffalo. And we got back, and it was a tent just full of cookies and chicken, and it sounds crazy, but that was like gold for us, and so. Long story short, all of that extra attention, I ended up getting honor grad, which was really cool. So I got honor grad out of boot camp, and then they sent us away because like I said, the MPs were there. We were here I am, I'm just an admin type, and I'm beating out all the MPs. That was kind of cool too. So I ended up going to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, for my advanced individualized training. My job was a 75 Echo, which was a personnel action specialist. So while I was there, I had a problem. I was really good at push-ups, and I could run really fast and really far, but I couldn't type. I could not type. I spent my nights in the typing room just typing. It was one of those old typewriters that keys did this, and they would lock up on me, and I don't know how, because I didn't type fast. I think I was typing too slow. And so I had to type 25 words per minute just to get out of AIT. And I'm like, how do you do this? Like, that was hard for me. Like, I couldn't do that. Here I am. I could run 2 miles in less than 13 minutes. I even got honor grad, got to go to lunch with the base general because I got honor grad, and I can't type. and this is my job. Well, I put my mind to it, I dug deep, and I did actually pass that test. I did 26 words. So I got my 26 words, I passed, and here I am for my next duty assignment. I was so lucky. Here I am, 18 years old. Where did they send me? Fort Clayton, Panama. Like, that's vacation, right? A little girl from Ohio going to Panama? This is good times. So there was actually 4 of us at my AIT that were going down to Panama. So we got down to Panama. Has anybody ever been to Panama? So when I got there, it was in 1987, and it was really interesting. The culture there was fun, but they didn't like Americans very much. So you had to really watch when you go off base. There was some places that were just restricted. You couldn't go. They tried to get you to stick to the places that were safe. But there was an Air Force base over there too. So we would go to the Air Force base and spend some time at the Air Force base. And then there was this little strip where everybody hung out on Sundays. And so we would hang out there. The Air Force base though, man, I did it wrong because boy, did they eat good. One of the things about Panama, I remember, they had 2 seasons versus our 4 season. So, you know, we have our 4 seasons. They have rainy season and dry season. And it rains for 6 months and it's dry for 6 months. And those 6 months that it rains so hard, it literally bounces off of the concrete. So my one battle buddy, or my one friend, we decided we were going to move off base and we were going to get our own apartment. And we got the okay of it. We had one of those little bugs, VW bugs, the old style VW bugs, not the fancy new ones with the old ones. And they had primer spots all over it because down in Panama, if there is this much room between buses, another bus will fit into it. So you buy the vehicle that another soldier passes down there. So you can buy $200, you can have a vehicle there. So we bought this vehicle, and I'll never forget, we left at lunch to go to Pope Air Force Base, and because again, they eat really well there and they have buffets. And we had jungle fatigues. Now I don't have a jungle fatigue up here, but a jungle fatigue is almost similar to what they wore in the Vietnam War. It's just green, OD green, which is olive drab green, and they're solid. And we had jungle boots. And we're coming back. Now, when it rains, it starts at 1 and it usually ends around 4. So you can pretty much time it. Well, we were running late and we got stuck in this rain, which is very hard rain. So I'm hanging out the side of the passenger side with a coat hanger attached to the windshield wiper, trying to make the windshield wiper go back and forth. And I'm soaking wet in this OD green. We get back and I miss formation. My sergeant was yelling at me and he asked me where I was and I was like, "Sergeant, in the bathroom, Sergeant." And he looked at me and he was like, "I don't even want to know. I don't even know what you were doing in the bathroom." But Fort Clayton, Panama was a really exciting tour for me. Up to, I lost a battle buddy there. She had been actually she was with me in AIT and I really never talked about that. She was with me in AIT and we lived in the barracks together, and our barracks was really cool. The Panama Canal came through our base and you could literally see the ships come through the locks. And so it was a really cool base that we were at, but the males lived above the females in the barracks. And I'm sorry, the females, we were on top and the males were below us. One of my very dear friends that went to AIT with me, we all went down there together. This guy that was stationed with us in our unit had murdered her. And it was really hard for me, and my command sent me home on leave because I couldn't deal with it. And when I got back, we went through the trial and all of that for that. She was an only child and it was really upsetting. And we left, I was really close with her mom, and her mom was really sad. The government wouldn't even send her down there for the trial. And I thought that was really wrong, but we kept in touch with her. He was sentenced to life in prison. He almost got away though because technicalities, but he is in life in prison for that. And when I left there, it was just the timing of operation. I'm sorry, we were going in to get Noriega. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. We were going in to get out Noriega. You guys remember that? So my command decided to get me out of there. I was pregnant and they needed to get me home. So I got to go home before Operation Just Cause. I mean, within days of Operation Just Cause. So I came back to the States and I went to Fort Detrick, Maryland. So I got to Fort Detrick, Maryland, and I was spending my time there, and I was really good at running. I don't think I might have told you that. So I actually represented the base running on their team. They had a team that we would run 10Ks and we'd represent Fort Detrick, but then they also put me on their honor guard. So I was on the post honor guard because I was pretty squared away. And so I got to travel around and do a lot of prestigious parades and all that. I never did talk about what I did I? So in Fort Detrick, in Panama, I did ID cards and awards and things like that. So as personnel action specialist, I could just do anything administrative. When I got to Fort Detrick, I ended up doing ID cards again, and it was kind of boring, I ain't gonna lie. It wasn't really a fun base like Fort Detrick or Fort Clayton, Panama. So I was coming up on the end of my 3 years because I only did a 3-year enlistment. And they said to me, you want to re-enlist? And I'm like, what are you going to give me? And I didn't want to come back to Ohio, but I needed something from it. So I was like, how about airborne school? And they're like, okay, we'll give you airborne school. So I actually re-enlisted to go to airborne school because I can run. And that's what they do. And heck, I've never really flown in a plane other than go to Panama and back, but it sounds cool to jump out of a plane, so I'll do that. So I ended up re-enlisting, and I went down to Fort Benning, and I got the distinct honor of completing airborne school down there. It was very tough. It was very physically tough. It was very emotionally tough because they're preparing you to jump out of perfectly good airplanes. You need to stay alert to stay alive. So they really put you on point where you need to be. After I got done completing my airborne school, they gave me orders to go to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, home of the airborne, right? So I got to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and shortly after I got there, well, they decided they were going to start this big old fight over in Saudi Arabia, and it was called the Persian Gulf. Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So I'm sure you're aware of Desert Shield and Desert Storm. So my first uniform up here is actually the first uniform that I actually wore over in deployment. As you see, there's an array of them, and you can just see the different times. This is called chocolate chips. They call these the chocolate chip uniforms. So this is what I wore when I was over there. Kind of interesting, huh? I don't know why I still have this, but I do. Through all the years that I've actually moved and relocated, I've always kept that uniform. I still have the boots for that too. I ended up going over there and I did casualty reporting. That was my job over there. It wasn't a really great job to have because we did have a lot of deaths over there. And what my job was to get the message traffic back to the States so that they could notify the next of kin. And we didn't do just for KIAs, killed in action, we also did people that were very seriously ill and seriously ill. One of the challenges that we had was the terrain. We weren't used to that type of terrain with our Humvees. That desert, the big sand dunes, we had a lot of rollovers. And with the rollovers, we were having a lot of casualties. So a lot of our casualties came pre-Desert Storm, just during Desert Shield, when we were there just to be there with our forces. I'm sure that you may attest the USO loves us. So this was my first interaction with the USO. You guys know Major Dad? He was a Marine in the movie. Well, he was a Marine. Major Dad, Delta Burke's husband. Don't know that? I don't remember his real name, but he is an actor. So he decided he was going to come over to where we were at. And we were at the makeshift chow hall. It was a tent, and he was signing autographs. I should have brought him. I have him at my office. Anyways, the alarms went off for an NBC attack. And he's just standing there. He has nothing. And I'm like, don't you have a mask? You need to get your mask on. And he's just like, I have nothing. And I'm like, why did you get here with nothing? That was the threat there, was biological attacks, right? Nothing. He had nothing. So then Bob Hope. I know you know who Bob Hope is. All right, now we're getting somewhere. So Bob Hope decides he's going to come over to where we were at in Kuwait. Well, at this time, he was taken ill. Mind you, this is in 1990. He was taken ill, and he couldn't make it. And I was at Champion, Maine, which was I was attached out to the 82nd. So we, they had taken this big skeleton key and cut it out of some board, some wood, and they painted it white, and it said "Key to Champion, Maine," and it had Bob Hope's name. And they were going to present this key to Bob Hope when he came, and he didn't come. So they made arrangements through the USO to get Steve Martin there. You know Steve Martin? All right. So Steve Martin comes over to Champion, Maine. Well, they give him the same key that they were going to give Bob Hope. They just took red paint and crossed out Bob Hope and wrote Steve Martin. And they gave it to Steve Martin, and he thought that was the greatest thing ever. He loved it. Him and his wife came over, so that was really cool. I thought it was really cool for me because it was a part of history, because I remember going back to World War II, going back to when Vietnam, so when the USO used to, not World War II, I'm sorry, Vietnam, when the USO used to support our troops. And they'd come over into theater and help raise the morale. It sucked. Back then, during Desert Storm, we couldn't just Skype. We couldn't email. We literally had to write letters. I remember getting a VHS tape of my daughter. Remember I told you I had that little girl? And on the VHS tape, the USO would come and have a machine, somewhat like that gentleman back there, and we got to put our videotapes in there. And I got to watch her say her ABCs. So it was kind of cool. And then I was able to sign up for a slot for 15 minutes, and I got to go and I got to do my video and put it in an envelope, a VHS tape, and send it back home. So that's the way we communicated back then. And actually, it's kind of cool because I have a trunk at home that has all of this in it. I have all the letters I've got, all the letters I've received. Everything is in there. It's a piece of that, it's like a time capsule for me. And all my other deployments, I don't have that because it was easy. It was Skype, it was FaceTime, it was, email. It's just the communication was there. Plus it was, I'm gonna be very forward, it was a distraction. Back then I wasn't distracted. I was focused on the mission. I was there doing my mission. And that's what we did. When I came back from Desert Storm, I spent a little bit more time at Fort Bragg, and that's when I came up on orders for a hardship tour. I was going to Korea. Has anybody been to Korea? South Korea, that is. Okay, so I had an opportunity to go to Korea. I was voluntold I had to go to Korea. So I had I had another child before that. Because it was way over a year before I went to Korea. It was in 1993 when I went there. And my son was born at Fort Bragg, and he was little. He was just young. He was born in 91. So he was about 2 years old when I went over to Korea. I spent a year over there, and I did casualty reporting. I worked 24 hours on, I worked 48 hours off. While I was over there, I had started to go to college, University of Maryland, and they invested in us. And while I was there, I met this lady who said, how would you like an opportunity to teach at a university here? Now, today with the human trafficking, I probably wouldn't have done this, but back then it was like, okay, I actually had a really cool job. I worked at a university in Korea, South Korea, where I had an array of students from elementary school to middle school, high school, and adults. And I would go to this university once a week. I would spend 4 hours, 1 hour for each class. I had my own classroom, and all I had to do was just act like I was in America. They wanted so much to know about our culture. They wanted to, all my room was set up like you would go into an American classroom. I had our flag. We did all the things that you would do if you went to an American school. We observed all the American holidays in my classroom, and it was just great. It was really fun. They loved the Christmas. We sang Christmas carols. Halloween didn't work out so well because Mr. Lee got carried away when I had him dressed up like a werewolf and scared the kids, and that didn't work out very well. The owner of it was called an institution, but it was a university. The owner of the institution was not happy over that, but he kept me because they really liked me. But it was really a really great opportunity for me. I made some really good money off of that. was tax-free. And I was able to pay off a lot of my debt, and it was just a really good situation for me. But it was an amazing opportunity. I got back to the States, and my son, who was just a little guy at the time, he had came up to me at the airport, and he said to me, for the first time I really heard him speak words besides mama, was, "Are you my mommy?" And I knew at that point that I probably needed to be a mom. So I ended up going to my first sergeant. I'm like, "Look, First Sergeant, I really love serving our country. It's been a distinct honor and pleasure, but I need to be a mom." So I ended up doing an early release. I didn't finish my 9 years. I only completed 8, and I ended up going into the civilian sector. I was married at the time, so I became a spouse, a military spouse. I was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky at this point. We left Fort Bragg and I went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and I ended up going to college. And it was I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I knew it needed to be somewhere within criminal defense. I really wanted to be involved in the criminal system and representation, but I just knew I couldn't go to college to be an attorney because I didn't have that much time. I was a single parent, or not a single, I didn't have that much time on my GI Bill. So I went to school and became a paralegal. And I ended up working for a gentleman. He was in the Tennessee side. Fort Campbell is like half the bases in Kentucky, half the bases in Tennessee. So I ended up going to work for a gentleman with my internship in Tennessee. His name was Michael Love. And it was just perfect for me because I had my Army background and we represented Army soldiers. And it was really like, it just fit. And we did criminal defense for court martials. And Michael was death qualified, which means he would take all the death cases that were there within the community. There was only a couple attorneys that could do death cases, which would be people that would be convicted to death for their offenses if they were found guilty. So we ended up representing a couple serial killers. We ended up representing people in the military that didn't do really good at their court martials. We ended up representing, I don't know if you ever heard about the baseball bat murders. That was a big case that we were representing when I left there. I left Fort Campbell area, because I wasn't stationed there, in about 1999 to come back to Ohio. One of the things I found out was that the military can cause a real strain on your relationships, and I wasn't very successful at that. I was really good at what I do individually, but I wasn't good with that partner thing. And so I was going through a divorce from a soldier, and I came back up here to Ohio, and he kind of followed me, and it was just really bad, and I was just, I was lost without the military, let's just say that. So here I am, I'm a civilian, I've got 2 little ankle biters, and I needed to find my way. I got lost. So what I did was, I decided once I got my children into school, my youngest into school, I was gonna go back into the military because that's what I wanted to do. I didn't get out because I wanted to. I enjoyed what I did. I knew who I was when I was in the military. I found myself. I wanted to serve our country. I took pride in what I did. When I went in just to go to school, just to get out of Stark County, I found who I was in the military. I found out that I was really good at what I did, and I loved wearing, the pride of wearing that uniform is beyond nothing that I've ever experienced. So I went to an Army recruiter and I said, "Hey, I want to join the military again." And the Army recruiter said, "How long have you been out?" And I said, "Well, let's see, just 6 years." He said, "Can't take you after 4. And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I mean, like, you've invested a lot of money into me. I'm a war veteran, you know. I mean, like, I've got schooling behind me. I've got credentials. You've invested. What do you mean you can't take me? And he said, "Nope." He said, "We can't take you after 4." He said, "Go see the Navy. They'll take anyone." Yeah. So that's where this begins, right? So I ended up going to the Navy recruiter, which was right across the street or across the hallway. And sure enough, they said, we'll take you. And I'm like, all right. And that was really cool for me. However, I forgot. I don't swim. I don't even like water, and I'm afraid of sharks. So this is kind of problematic, but I'm serving our country, and I didn't care what cloth I wore. I was serving this country, and I was very proud to do that. So I wasn't on active duty because I couldn't go on active duty with my children. I was in the reserves, which was okay. So my reserve center was in Akron. They had a reserve center on Dan Street. And I showed up at my first drill weekend. And so this is the Class A's from the Army. This is my uniform. And I did put this on before I came, and it fits, I'm just saying, since 1994. But this is my Army uniform. This is called Class A's. If you take this jacket off and you have on the pants and the blouse, it's called Class B's. That's only 2 uniforms you get. Class A, Class B, or your camouflage, your BDUs, right? So I show up at drill weekend with what I thought was a Class B uniform for the Navy, and here it looks like I had 3 different uniforms put together like the Potato Man, like Mr. Potato Man. I was not wearing the right uniform, and I was like, I don't understand this. They didn't send me to boot camp. They said, you were in the Army, you're airborne, you don't have to go to Navy boot camp. I thought that was good until I showed up in the wrong uniform. And then I'm taking a tour, and I'll tell you what, the Navy, and you could attest to this, I'm sure over there, they have a really weird language. Like everything, like in the Army it's called latrine, and the Navy it's called a head. You know, and I'm like, this is a lot for me. It was a lot for me to wrap my head around. I couldn't do it. So I'm standing in the reserve center one day, and the Navy lets me wear my airborne wings because it's my qualification. So all my personal awards from the Navy or Army I get to carry over. So I'm standing in the reserve center, and an Army recruiter comes in, and he said, what are you doing wearing airborne wings in the Navy? And I was like, oh, that was when I was in the Army. And he says to me, why don't you come into the Army? I said, because you guys wouldn't take me. And he was like, we could take you now. He said, all you gotta do is sign this piece of paper. It's called a conditional release. You can leave the Navy to come into the Army. I said, that easy? He said, yes, ma'am. I said, okay. So I got this, we had to do a request chit. So I got my request chit, and I shipped it up through the chain of command. It got to the skipper. The skipper calls me in. He says, LN3. I was just a little E4 at the time. He said, LN3, which is the legal man. What is this? And I said, sir, with all due respects, I cannot do the Navy. He said, tell me why. I said, well, aside from the fact I don't swim and I don't like sharks, I don't understand this Navy. I said, I'm gonna be very honest with you, sir. I don't understand this Navy. It's not that I'm not committed to our country, because I am committed to our country. I want to serve our country. I just can't do it in this branch. I need to go back to what I know and I'm good at, and that is the United States Army, sir. He said, I'll tell you what I'll do, petty officer. He said, you come on board here for 6 months every day, which is called active duty for special work. You do this for 6 months, and if you do not like my Navy, in the end of this 6 months, I will sign this request chit and I will let you be a running target. I'm like, yes, right? 6 months, 3 years, I can do this. So I ended up going on active duty at the Reserve Center. So it was like being on active duty. Every day I woke up, I went to PT, I put on my uniform, I served all day. And my job while I was on active duty was, because they had to give me a reason to be there, was to coordinate funeral honors up at Rittman. So this was really good for me because I got to use my military bearing and my precision and my timely military bearing, because I was very good at it. And I got to train people on how to do military funeral honors for our fallen comrades at the Ohio Western Reserve National Cemetery right here in Medina County. So that was really exciting for me. I got to do this. And on the other side of it, what I didn't tell you is I actually came into the Navy through the JAG Corps. So, because I was a paralegal, I became a legalman in the United States Navy. So, I was doing legal stand-downs. I was also representing the United States of America inside of administrative boards. So, I was kind of like the prosecutor prosecuting drug cases when we'd have reservists that would come up on urinalysis that were hot. And we would try those. And it's really unique. An admin board is kind of like a mini court. Like, it's set up and it follows just like a mini court. So I was really enjoying what I was doing, and I was doing some really important things. And I was learning a lot. He gave me a first class to mentor me, and I started learning a lot. And so the end of my 6 months ran into 3 years. And I really liked it. And one of my funerals that I did, there was an 06 that passed away. Now, for military purposes of funeral burial, when you pass away, the military funeral honors, the detail that's there, has to match your rank or higher. Okay? So when you have a comrade that passes away, you have your flag folding, two-man flag folding, trumpet if available for taps, and if available, you could have a 21-gun salute unless you're retired military or die on active duty. You're going to get full military honors. So I had an 06 passed away, and I needed an 06 to present, to do the flag folding and present the flag. And there was a gentleman who was up in Cuyahoga County who was an 06 who drilled up there, and he came down. And he asked me if I wanted a job, like after we worked together for a little bit, and I was like, okay, what do you want me to do? And he said, I want you to be a county veteran service officer. And I didn't really know what a county veteran service officer was at the time, but I said, let me look into it and get back to you. So then I found out what a county veteran service officer was, and this is somebody that connects veterans to their benefits with the Department of Veterans Affairs. And I'm like, that's kind of cool. Like, I don't really have a good civilian job. I'm going from law firm to law firm. I'm working on patents and trademarks, and it's so boring. They're just using me as a glorified secretary. I'm not really doing what I did with Mr. Love, which is sitting beside serial killers in court, which is kind of exciting. So I'm like, okay, I'll do this. So I came off of active duty for special work after 3 years because I wanted to take this opportunity in the civilian sector. Oh, great. Now, guess what they do? They sign me to a ship. And I already promised the captain I was going to stay. I can't do a ship. So I know what I was going to do. Well, CM1 McCoy came up and he was like, Ellen too, he said, what are you doing after you get off of this active duty? I said, I don't know, but I know I cannot do a ship. I don't like water, I'm afraid of sharks, and I don't swim. And he said, why don't you be a CB? I said, what's a CB? I didn't know what a CB was. Do you know what a CB is? Yeah. And he said, you might not like it because you go out in the dirt and you sleep in tents. I'm like, yes. I said, Sam, don't let the cuteness fool you. That's what I love. That's what I do. Seriously, I got a lot of grit. And so I actually joined the CBs, NMCB 26, and I ended up going and becoming their independent legalman, and I was stationed at Selfridge Air National Guard Base up in Detroit, Michigan. And I would drive up there every weekend and do my drills, and I loved it. We oversaw 3 states, Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan. We had detachments in all of those states, so I'd run around and do legal stand-downs, wills, power of attorneys, really was getting into it. And then I would also do captain's mass when we would have people that didn't do so well, because I don't know if you know, but CBs play hard and work hard, so they get in some trouble, and we ended up having to take care of that. But I had a lot of friends because they knew they wanted, they want legal to take care of them, so I'd always have a CB squaring me away. Then in 2006, I came up on a deployment orders again. So I ended up in 2006 finding myself wearing this amazing beauty. See my little CB patch? So I was the command legalman assigned to the officer in charge over in Kuwait, Camp Morrell. Camp Morrell, General Morrell was actually the founder of the Seabees, and so I stayed at Camp Morrell, which is where we were housed, and then we had a lot of Seabees that were moved out to the FOBs, the forward operating bases, but we were housed at Camp Morrell. Camp Morrell was a really small command. We did not have a chow hall. Remember the Air Force, how I told you they like to eat? Every Friday was surf and turf. So we would get in a convoy and we would go to the Air Force Base to get surf and turf. They even had a pool. Like the Air Force had a pool in the desert. Who does that? The Air Force. And we didn't have a chow hall. So we would also, we shared the fence with the Army. So we would go over to the Army side and we would eat. And you can only go during certain hours because they would secure it. And so you had to be over there at certain times. What was really cool, because OSU came back over again, so I got to meet Bill O'Reilly. Do you know Bill O'Reilly? I got to meet Bill O'Reilly. Mark Wills, do you know who Mark Wills is? He's a country singer. So I got to meet Mark Wills, which was really cool. And they give you these things where you can get your, you get their names and they sign everything. Carrie Underwood had just won American Idol, and she was at another base. My battle buddy, because you're always assigned to two, you have a battle buddy when you're deployed. My battle buddy somehow got us signed up on a convoy to go to this base, and Carrie Underwood was there. So we got to see Carrie Underwood. So I got a picture with Carrie, and that was really exciting for us. I didn't realize her family was so military invested. So that was kind of cool. But my duties over there was legal. Unfortunately, we did have some people that got caught doing some things they shouldn't have done over there. So we did have some NJPs over there, and actually had to send some people back for court martials. It was really bad. So we had one guy, he decided he would have a little tiki bar in his little footlocker in his hooch. We used to call them little hooches, which are literally just thin pieces of wood that we slept in. Aside from being outside in the elements, we were Seabees, so we made these things. And he decided he was going to have a little tiki bar that his girlfriend, who was in the military, was sending over alcohol. I don't know how she got it through, but she did. But the bad thing was that he had a flask in his jacket, and he was getting ready to do ECP watch, which is the entry control point watch. And that was the entry to our base. Not good, not good at all. It's a dry country. No alcohol is allowed. So I received a package one day from the American Legion Auxiliary ladies, and it was like all these, you ever see those little syrup bottles that you can get for your coffees and stuff? And so what I started doing, my mom would send cookies over to me, and I'd try to put them on the quarterdeck to boost the morale, because I worked right outside the OIC's office on the quarterdeck. And I started getting these little flavors, and I'd put them by this little coffee area that we had by the cookies. I was just bringing stuff from the chow hall and trying to make it just nice for us, because we really didn't have a lot. And one day the OIC called me in, and he had me at parade rest. And he pulled out one of those little bottles and he stuck it on the desk, and he said, "LM1, do you want to explain this?" And I'm looking like, what's his problem? It's just flavored coffee. What's he not like coffee anymore? Like, what is this all about? Here it was, a bottle of peppermint schnapps. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, here I am. I'm working for the JAG Corps. I'm legal, and I'm getting in trouble for alcohol in theater. And I'm like, sir, I can explain, I think. I don't know. That's my exclamation. I don't know what that is. He knew me. He knew my integrity. He knew that it was not intentional. I don't know what box it came in, because I would get care packages and give them to the other troops, and I would let them open the boxes and take what they wanted, and because they were all under, the platoon was under my charge. And somehow I would have caught it if I opened it, but it never got caught. We had an amnesty box where things that you shouldn't have had, like ammo or controlled items, could go into this amnesty box, and you just got no punishment. So he walked me over to the amnesty box, and I had to put the little peppermint schnapps in there. So I wrote something back, and I was telling the lady at the ladies auxiliary about it, and she says to me, "Oh, that must have been so-and-so. She's their treasurer." She said, "And she can't see." And I'm like, "Well, you better check your books then. If she can't see, I don't know how she's budgeting your money." But I guess she just opened up a cupboard and stuck the peppermint schnapps in there, and they felt so bad for it. But it wasn't a bad deployment. We did have, we had some incidents, but we brought everybody back alive, which was a good thing. We didn't lose anyone that deployment. It was a good deployment. We got back 2006, 2007 we got back actually. I was working at the Veterans Service Commission in Cuyahoga County, and this is kind of where my civilian life comes into play too, because at this point, I injured my knee on my deployment. I got a really beautiful scar and it's, you know, kind of messed up. And my boss had a problem with me. I had LOD and he was upset that I wasn't at work, but I had to take care of my surgeries and I had to do all that. And we didn't really get along very well. And an opportunity just came aboard with Ottawa County. They were looking for an executive director. So I interviewed over there. There was a Marine over there that told me about it. So I interviewed with them and I got the blessed opportunity to move to Ottawa County and be their executive director at their Veterans Service Commission. I'm not sure how many of you have you been to your Veterans Service Commission here in Medina County with Ed Zachary and his team? We need to get you that information. So I had the opportunity to go over to Ottawa County and do my service over there as executive director, which was an amazing opportunity. After about a few more years in 2012, guess what? That's when I got to wear this uniform. I got deployed again. So then I got to wear this amazing uniform. That was my next uniform for deployment. So we've got 3 deployment uniforms here. All different deployments, all different times. That deployment, I was actually blessed. I was a senior enlisted leader because I had already picked up senior chief petty officer. I made chief petty officer in 2008. I'm not sure how much you know about being a chief petty officer, but it's really cool. And this is one of the things I liked about the Navy. And when I went into the Navy, I said, as soon as I realized I was going to stay, I said, I am going to be a chief petty officer. Because a chief petty officer takes care of their troops. A chief petty officer wore the same uniform as an officer, and I thought that was pretty cool, because in the Army you don't do that. But the chief petty officer also is very respected for taking care of their people. And that's what I wanted to do, because I had a chief petty officer that didn't take care of me, because if he'd have taken care of me, I wouldn't have tried to go back to the Army. I wouldn't have came to my first drill weekend with my uniform messed up. That chief petty officer would have reached out to me before I got there. That chief petty officer would have had me inspected before I stood in those ranks for that first drill weekend. And that chief petty officer failed me. And because of his failing, I set my goal that I will be a chief petty officer and I will take care of my people. And I became a chief petty officer in 2008, and it was one of the most humbling moments of my life. To this day, I still take care of my people. I just do it in the civilian sector. But when I was with the Seabees, as I picked up when I became a chief petty officer, which is an E7, I was allowed to still be with the Seabees. But then when I picked up E8 as a senior chief petty officer, I had to leave the Seabees because I was beyond what I could do there with my responsibilities. I had to go for something greater, and I became a senior enlisted leader. So I had a lot of troops underneath me at this point. And my last deployment, I had about 300 troops underneath me that we took over. And what was really unique about it is I was an IA, which is an individual augmentee. So now up until this point, everybody I've ever deployed with, I was with them in the unit and I knew them. We knew who our weaknesses were, we knew what our strengths were. We were able to work together as a team. Well, this last deployment, they didn't do that to me. What they did is they stuck me in a unit with people I don't know. And that was a little challenging, but it was okay. I went to training like we have to do. You always go to training before you head over to theater. And through that training, I was able to get to know all my people, get to know my weaknesses, my strengths, get the trust. You had to have that trust of them to follow you. We went over there, and what was really cool about training, and when we went, yeah, they prepare you to know what to expect when you're over there. And one of the training evolutions we did was really cool because they had set up a village like it was Afghanistan, and people from California, from Hollywood, literally set this village up for us. So when we were doing our training, it was like we were literally in Afghanistan. And when you're in this training evolution, and they had actors, like people that were there that were dressed just like they were actually terrorists, that would just infiltrate you as you're going through your convoy through these towns. So there was towns that were set up. It was just really, really unique. But I appreciated that, because when you got over there, it wasn't like the first time you saw it. We actually went into an MRAP rollover. So they have these simulators that look like an MRAP, which was one of the big vehicles that we have, which are anti-tank armored tanks. So they put you in these simulators when you're in training, and you just start rolling over like you're doing a rollover in real life. And I can't help but to think, but back in the Persian Gulf, how many accidents did we have because of rollovers? There was a lot of casualties because of those Humvees rolling over. Well, now our vehicles have changed so much, and they're training us on what do you do when you're rolled over. So when you're upside down, they're showing, you got to let go of your seatbelt and try to get out without snapping your neck. But it was great because you were prepared for what if.
Attention members, the library will be closing in 30 minutes.
Oh.
If you would like to apply for a library card or pay a fine, please come to the customer service.
I got to go get this
desk
fine.
at
I'll be
time.
right back. No, I'm just kidding. I don't have any fines. So it was really a good experience. So while we were over there, we had a lot of forward operating bases and responsibilities. We had people that were over in the Horn of Africa. We had people that were in Bahrain that were assigned to us. We had people that were in Afghanistan that was assigned to us. And then we were in Kuwait as well. So we were all over. My duties and responsibilities, I did a lot of temporary duty at various places during that deployment. I did find myself in Afghanistan for a period of time. I spent some time in Bagram, which is an Air Force base. Bagram has a lot of different branches there, or I'm sorry, countries. It's a very busy place. And Kandahar. Kandahar was even bigger, and yeah. So, sorry, I just keep getting sidetracked. My mind is going elsewhere, so I apologize for that. One of my greatest experiences when I was at Bagram, I actually got to go to the SEAL base. I had to go there and do a stand down for bystander intervention for sexual assaults. Unfortunately, it was happening in theater, and the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy did a stand down and said that we will do a stand down, we will go out and we will talk about this because it was happening. And it wasn't just Navy though, it was, like I said, we had a lot of other countries there. So I actually had the chance to go on a SEAL base, which I thought was really cool. I never thought I'd be around the SEALs before. And it was really interesting to be able to do that. But they also had what was called angel flights there. And at any time throughout the day or night, there would be helicopters that would come in, and it would be our wounded and our service members that had been killed in action that would come into Bagram, and from Bagram, then they would get sent out to, be shipped over to Germany, and everybody, whoever was available, would just come and go to the flight line and pay respects as we were able to honor our comrades that had fallen. But anyway, so that deployment lasted until 2013, and then I came back and I said I was done. I was going to retire. Having served, I felt enough. I was enduring some personal challenges. For some reason, my husband thought it was cool to have 5 girlfriends while I was away. I don't like to share like that. That's a lot, right? That's about 5 too many. That's 5 too many. It was really hard for me though, because I had taken care of, I had been, this is what I said earlier, the distractions. I'm trying to focus on my mission and I'm getting emails. I'm getting this and that. I didn't like that. I wished it was back where it was back in 1990 when you had to send a letter, because I didn't have to read the letter, or you got a videotape. Instead, it was just too much, too much distraction. I had to really find a lot of strength to put that to the side. And I was able to focus on my mission, I promise you that. But when I came back home, that was when it was really hard for me, because now it was like, now what? And it was just cold. My house was cold, everything was cold for me, and I had to find myself. I had to find what was important to me. And I realized that I loved our country, I still love my country, and I wanted to serve our country, but I also never found myself. Like, I could never enjoy my personal life because I always put my service before myself, which is fine. I should. That's what I'm supposed to do. So I said, I'm going to retire. So the commanding officer of my reserve center contacted me and said, hey, I want you to be my OIC. Be my OIC. I'm like, are you serious? He wants me to be the officer in charge of one of his units. I'm like, are you serious? I want to retire. He said, I'll tell you what, just do it until I retire, and then we'll retire together. And I'm like, okay. So I took that challenge, and unfortunately, the new skipper that came on board tried to talk me into staying with her. And I was like, no, like, I seriously want to retire. So I said this is what I did. I was an E8, which is a senior chief petty officer. Every time I was up for an enlistment promotion in the Navy, I got promoted first time up. I accredited a lot to my Navy or my Army experience because I was a damn good leader, and that was what the Navy, I believe the Army taught me. And so with my opportunity in the Navy and my leadership that I had, I always got promoted. So anytime I was up for promotion, I got it. When I was up for senior chief, they made one senior chief. My first time up, guess what? I got it. I was humbled. So I said, okay. I'm up my first look at for E9, which is a Master Chief Petty Officer. First look at, and I said, if I am meant to be in this Navy, I said, God, you're going to give me that second star. But if you don't give me that second star, I'm going to move on, and I'm going to be retired. And I'm going to just enjoy my life. Guess what? I didn't get my second star first time. And that was okay, because guess what God did give me? An amazing man who is my husband today, who never served in the military, but I didn't want to put him through what I've been through. I didn't want to put him through that. Like I said, the families, it's hard to be a family member of the military. My children, they've sacrificed so much. When I did my retirement ceremony, my son, who is in the Marine Corps, was my guest speaker at my ceremony. And he stood up there and he presented at my ceremony, and he talked about how many birthdays I missed of his, how many holidays I missed of his. He just turned 28 on Saturday, and I drove to Ashland, where he lives, just to have breakfast with him, because I can never make it up, but I will always be there now because I'm retired and I can do that now. It's just been really challenging for the families, the sacrifices that they make. Like I said, we're focused on the mission, and we forget about the service to our, that the families make. My son, I have to brag on him a little bit. When he was messing up as a child, I don't know how he did it, because I was a drill sergeant at home. It's just the military was embedded in me, and I was just very stern, but he was rebellious. So I shipped him off to Sea Cadets, which is like a Young Marines program for children going up through. And he made it all the way up to Chief Petty Officer when he graduated his senior year, and he decided he wanted to go into the Navy. And I was like, no, you've done all these correspondence courses, and I knew he was a great leader. I saw it in him. So I brought home a Marine Corps recruiter. And he was like, are you crazy? I was like, no, I'm not. Sit down. Me and the recruiter just all night talking, 2 pots of coffee, just talking. My son didn't say anything. The recruiter left, and my son's like, what is that all about? I was like, you'll see. So the recruiter came back and asked him if he was interested in the Marine Corps. And so my son was like, "You're serious? You're gonna let me go in the Marine Corps?" I said, "Absolutely. You got something special inside you, son, and our country needs it." And so he joined the Marine Corps. And he had a list of all these jobs he qualified for. I was so proud of him. Guess what he chose? You're not gonna guess. Infantry. I was like, "Explain to me why you want to go infantry." He said, "Mom, because I want to be on presidential security. I want to provide security for the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America." And I was like, okay, but there was no guarantee. He was taking a gamble. I said, okay. So he goes off to boot camp, and I challenged him. I said, "You know, I got honor grad in boot camp." He said, okay. He goes off to boot camp. He makes honor grad. It was so great. I showed up he was at Parris Island. So I go down to Parris Island and I show up and I'm in my dress blues, and his drill sergeant looked at me. He said, "I should have known you had a chief petty officer at home," because he was so squared away. He graduated. They, at that point, had done all of his background because he had to go through all these security clearances, and it was really cool. Elmore, Ohio is where I used to live, and it was a little town, like 500 people. We had all the men in black showing up for interviews at this little village where I stayed at. We had 2 streetlights. Anyways, he ended up getting accepted for presidential security. So I got to go to 8th and I in DC, and I got to go to the Marine Corps' the Commandant's Parade, which was really cool. And I'm like, my phone is blowing up, and my son's like, "I see you." And I'm like, "Where are you?" He's like, "I'm not gonna tell you," because he was a sniper. He was there to protect the Commandant of the Marine Corps while he was waiting for his white level security clearance to go through. Well, his white level security clearance went through, and he got to go to Camp David instead of the White House. He got stationed at Camp David. So he was at Camp David protecting our Commander-in-Chief, which I was so proud of him, and I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. Then he calls me and he's like, "Hey, Senior Chief," he said, he's at the end of his tour, and part of being at the end of the tour is you get to have a photo with the Commander-in-Chief in the Oval Office, and I got to visit Camp David. And I'm like, this is so cool. So now they got to vet me through, which I'm good. I've got a secret clearance. I'm good. I'm not, no problem. But he says to me, he says, "All right, Senior Chief Mama," that's what he calls me, "I need to know your date of birth to get you on this list." And I said, "Huh?" Because they think I'm 29. I was like, "Well, hold up a second." I said, "Okay, you got a white level security clearance, and that's a high top secret security clearance, right?" He's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Nobody gets this information. I will give it to you, but you can't release it." So I give him my date of birth. He's like, "Seriously?" I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Oh my God, I thought you've been 29 forever. I didn't realize you were that old." I'm like, "Really?" So I ended up having the distinct pleasure of going to Camp David. And while I was there, you can't have cameras, you can't do any of that, you can't take anything from you or with you. So I got to go there, and I actually had heels on because I love my heels. And I was playing basketball on the Commander-in-Chief's basketball court. I wouldn't stop till I made 1 hoop, which I did. And then we got to go to his theater, and I say his because it is his place. And there was a bar there, and I got to watch the Steelers play Oakland Raiders, which was really cool. And I got to have some beers. I had 1 beer at the president's bar, and I thought that was really cool, right? So we're getting ready to leave, and my son says to me, "Senior Chief Mama, I got to ask you, do you have any contraband on you? Are you taking anything from here that you're not allowed to have? Like, you can't take a piece of this with you." And I was like, now mind you, I work for the JAG Corps still at this time, right? So I'm like, and I give him these. He said, "What is that?" I was like, "These are the beer caps we had our beer." I wanted to keep these beer caps as memories. And he turned his head, and I got to keep my beer caps. So the Miller Lite's mine. But I thought that was just the coolest thing ever. So then the very next day we woke up, and I had the distinct honor to meet our Commander-in-Chief. And I actually have a photo. It's in my office back in Stark County where I'm at the Veterans Service Commission. And it was really cool because it was surreal to meet my Commander-in-Chief. I just was in awe. And we walked up to him, and he thanked me for my service, and I was like, "No, I'm here for my son," because I'm so proud of him. I was in uniform, but it was my son that we were there for. And it was just like a family photo I don't think too many people have. My son and I in uniform with the Commander-in-Chief, and that was in 2013. I just got back from the Senior Enlisted Academy when I did that. So I was really proud of that and very proud of him today. He's still serving in the reserves. He came off of active duty a couple years ago, and he's still a sniper. And he's just drilling right now, 9 years. He's doing 9 years. He did 6 active duty. And then, like I said, my stepdaughter joined the Air Force on Tuesday, so I'm really proud of her right now. Trying to get my 18-year-old to go to the Coast Guard. I never thought I would ever buy an Air Force flag, but 2 weeks ago I had a party and I bought an Air Force flag for the party. So I'm trying to talk my youngest daughter into going to the Coast Guard so we can have all the branches covered. I was like, listen, I carried 2. You guys can pick up the rest, right? So with that, I know I did a lot of talking. I'm sure I missed a lot. I'm certainly open. We have a few minutes for question and answer or any questions that you might have. Anything I might have intrigued.
Did you read the book on Camp David?
Did I read the book on Camp David? No, I didn't. I can't say I did.
Interesting.
Okay. Well, now you've challenged me to do that. What I did get, though, was a really cool pen case, and it has the last 13 presidents, their wooden pens, and their signatures is actually burned into each one of the pens. And I thought that was really cool. A little history from there, but I'll have to read the book.
My nephew was there on a window situation,
Okay.
and he only got to see about 3 buildings. He said my boss was there, and he was to meet a guy, and he said he drove around, couldn't find him, and he called him. He said, I don't know where I am. He said, we know exactly where you are.
Yeah.
We were following you for 45 minutes.
I know, that's right. Yeah. It was really cool to it was surreal, like I said, because you're like, oh, wow, there's the First Lady, and it was just really cool. In the one house, it was around Christmas time when I went, so it was all decorated, and they had each president, if you would, designs their own postcards, and so they had them framed with all the previous postcards, and it was just really cool history
One
to
thing
be there.
surprised me in the book, the commander's 2 young daughters were playing with John, and he had to go to the bathroom, so they took him into one of the cabins. The Secret Service came in with guns drawn, said, don't ever take him out of our sight.
Yeah. So what I have up here are called challenge coins. Challenge coins are coins from your service and everywhere that you've been. There's a lot of history to challenge coins, and these are like all my units that I've served with or places that I've been. And this isn't even all of them. Some of mine originally had been taken from me, but they're really interesting. They show where you're at, what you've done. My original airborne coin was stolen from me, so I bought another one, and I still have to get it engraved with my graduation date. But these challenge coins, the history of it is there's a couple of different stories. First story that you have, it goes back to World War I, where there was I think it was a first lieutenant. He was very well off financially, and so he liked to flaunt his wealth. And he had gotten a piece of brass, and he had got the brass kind of like engraved with his name on it, and he had given it to all of the troops that he had served with. And one of the guys had kept that, and he became a prisoner of war. And they took everything from him, but they didn't take this and a couple other items, and he kept it in a little bag, and he had it around his neck. Well, he was able to escape. And when he got across to Allied forces, they thought that he was the enemy and they were going to kill him. Well, then he had this little coin in his bag, and they pulled it out, and they realized and identified him as an American troop. So they did not kill him because he was Allied forces. And they called that the challenge coin. So that's some of the history. Now, if you also look up a challenge coin, you'll find that they say that is not true. The Air Force is saying the challenge coins didn't start at that point. They didn't start until around the 70s or 80s, where people, what's that?
No, it's earlier.
I know it is. And so they've got their little fable of how it started or whatever have you. What I did do, one of the things I do find true to this is every time that I induct a new Chief Petty Officer, I always carry my challenge coin in my pocket for them, and I give it to them at the end of their training, and I tell them that I've carried their coin all through their training, and I give it to them at that point. So I did get an Air Force one for my stepdaughter, and I carried it, and I presented her an Air Force coin when she left at the MEP station for boot camp. But there's 2 challenge coins that I hold true to me, and I keep these on my persons. These I just keep in a drawer. I have a challenge coin from the Secretary of the Navy, SecNav winners. So when you do things and you meet people that are important and you do things, they give these to you as awards. So I do have some prestigious ones back here, but the two that I keep most dear to me, and I keep these and carry these with me everywhere I go, and anytime I'm doing a speech in the community or anytime I'm doing a presentation or anywhere I'm at, I always have these on me. This is a coin my son coined me. This is the Marine Corps emblem, and this is the Commander-in-Chief's emblem. This is from Camp David. And when I was leaving out of Baltimore on my way to my last deployment, my son met me at the airport. We left and we had lunch and he brought me back. And then he coined me as I went over to my deployment. So I kept that in my pocket the whole time I was deployed. This other coin, a friend of mine who was also a Chief Petty Officer gave me this. And it's just the Senior Chief Petty Officer. It's simple, Senior Chief Petty Officer. But on the back, it's engraved 1 of 1. That keeps me humble. This is very humbling to me. So these are the two out of all those that I carry with me at all times. Now, they will tell you too with the challenge coin, if you go into a bar and there's a bunch of veterans there and they start tapping their coin, you pull your coin out to see who can trump each other, who's got the highest coin. And if you don't have a coin, you're buying. So those are some of the other fun with the challenge coins themselves. So these are the challenge coins. If you don't have questions or if you just want to talk with me one-on-one, that's fine. Come look at the coins if you want to, my uniforms. I did bring my Senior Chief. Oh, this is the Navy's uniform. This is the one that we wear, our Navy work uniform, so blue. They call these blueberries. I don't understand how you're on a ship with these. If you go overboard, I don't know how they find you. I used to tell all the people they turn orange when they get wet with salt water, but they believed it. And then this is my dress uniform. I actually currently wear this when I do things because I'm retired. I have the distinct pleasure of doing this. So that's my dress blues. The Navy has a whole bunch of uniforms. If it rains, you wear this uniform. If the wind blows to the east, you wear this uniform. You wear that uniform. As I was Mr. Potato Man going up to my first drill weekend. So I could have brought you all kinds of uniforms, but I thought I would share something with you just to let you see the difference in the changes of times and as well as the uniforms. And I mean, it'd be interesting if I had the boots with me too, because you could even see the way the boots have changed through time. And the gear has changed through time. My last deployment, I had 65 pounds of gear on me every day. Every day I had a flak vest, I had a Kevlar, I had my weapon, I had 2 weapons. I carried a 9 and I had a 14. So, you know, it's a lot. I had some really nice abs too. I had some really good abs that last deployment from all that weight. But, you know, change of times, you know, so I do thank you all for coming this evening. I really appreciate your time this evening.